topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the host and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
What's working on purpose anyway? Each week, we ponder the answer to this question. People ache for meaning and purpose at work, to contribute their talents passionately and know their lives really matter. They crave being part of an organization that inspires them and helps them grow into realizing their highest potential. Business can be such a force for good in the world, elevating humanity. In our program, we provide guidance and inspiration to help usher in this world we all want, working on purpose. Now, here's your host, Dr. Elise Cortez.
Welcome back to the Working on Purpose program. Thanks for tuning in again this week. Great to have you. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, joining you live from Dallas, Texas, which is home base for me. If you don't know me yet, I'm a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, organizational logotherapist, inspirational speaker, social scientist, and author. My team and I help companies discover and articulate their purpose through their culture and operations. We work with forward-thinking or forward-reaching organizations to develop inspirational leaders who create cultures where people actually want to come to work and do their best. And we provide programs like the Grab Your Gusto that enable individual team members to discover and unleash their passion and purpose at work to catalyze fulfillment, engagement, and productivity. You can learn more about how we can work together at EliseCortez.com. With us today is Joseph Camberado. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. He developed a passion for business growth early in his career and today helps entrepreneurs and business owners grow through small business loans and services. We'll be talking about the more democratized, that's a hard word, democratized environment appearing in workforces across the country and how leaders can take the reins on purposeful work and employee wellness. He joins us today from Long Island, New York. Joe, welcome to Working on Purpose.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So great to have you. I'm looking forward to this conversation. This has been such an interesting time, and you are an interesting chap to talk to about what's going on in the world of business and work. So let's have it, shall we?
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me, and it's always good to talk about these things, especially with all the stuff that's happening in the world today around this stuff.
Yeah, so one of the things I'm doing this year, Joe, is I'm working on a book that addresses the leaders out there that are like pulling their hair out, like trying to figure out what to do. It's the pandemic, it's the great resignation. There's all this stuff going on in the world, and they're just going nuts. So that's what I'm working on next this year. So your perspective on what's been going on in the world the last couple of years will be interesting. Sort of, we can start with that so we can presence our listeners. We have listeners and viewers across the globe. So let's start, Joe, if we can, talking about your perspective from the last couple of years, the pandemic, remote work, et cetera. How have those conditions changed what people want from their lives and their work, from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's it's a great question. And, it's so funny is, this whole focus around the great resignation, it's a little confusing because, so people are quitting their jobs, but they're going to other jobs. And I think, sometimes people read like the headlines and they say, oh, the great resignation and no one wants to work. But no, people are working. The unemployment rates are actually back to record lows again. And people are working. There's been all this focus on it now, and which is so interesting to me because all this stuff really was already happening pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. The job market was a challenging job market prior to COVID. It was super competitive. I think a lot of things finally caught up to itself. And I also think because of COVID, a lot of people finally had time to think and actually use some of that time to stop and think. There wasn't a lot to do. So you're kind of forced to do it. And I think a lot of people really re-looked at, what they want out of life, where they want to be, and whether that's, job, career, a career move, doing things that they've always wanted to do and finally doing them, or saying, I don't want to live here anymore and relocating. So, I think you had a lot of things rapidly accelerate to COVID that were already happening, but because COVID accelerated so much, it seemed, so crazy and extreme, but they really were happening, prior to, which is really interesting. And a lot of people aren't talking about that. So, I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really agree with you, Joe, that the pandemic really gave people the kind of pause that most people really don't get very often in life. And it's so necessary. Of course, I know that from the work that I do, just how important it is to be able to sit and listen in the stillness to that which is trying to get your attention very desperately, usually your purpose. So, yes, reevaluating your life and what's in it and what they want and what they don't want. And to your point, Joe, what I also have seen in my research is that there was already the interest in people changing jobs before the pandemic, but when it hit, people got a little bit more of a need for security and stability, and hung on to a job maybe longer than they expected to ride that out. And then, of course, when things began to clear a little bit, then there
Yep.
was a greater exodus toward the doors that was already happening, as you say. That's what I've been able to unearth as well.
Yep. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, a lot of people didn't want to make a move because they didn't know what was going on. People didn't want to start at a new company. I think, you're comfortable where you are. You don't want to show up in a new place. Masks, no masks, remote, not remote, which is really interesting. But to kind of answer your question earlier too, I think it's really important now. You really have to be creating a great environment to work in, whether that's remote or, in the office. And if you're not focused on that, people just want more. They don't want a job. They want more, out of where they're showing up to every single day. Um,
Mhm.
some companies are doing a really great job of it, and some aren't. And if you're not, if you're not trying, I've had this talk with a lot of people. I think you have to understand too, like, what is your business, and what I mean by that is your business a stepping stone? Like, if you have a cashier's position, at a convenience store or a pizza restaurant, and I'm not knocking those businesses, but you got to understand like the positions. Like if it's a college, working in high school or college
Mhm.
type of position, and then people are supposed to graduate college and then not be a cashier, for the rest of their lives. I think you have to kind of understand what is it that you're offering, what is your business, what are the positions that you're offering. Some of those positions are meant for people to come and go, so you might want to rethink making those positions very easy to onboard and offboard, and
Mm.
also really incentivize those employees to actually find their own replacements. Some companies do a really great job at this. And then, if you are a business that there is a real career path, and it's a place that people can come and grow and be there for maybe the rest of their lives, then you got to keep up with the competition and do other things outside of just that career and that salary. We're finding that just in our own business that people, it's not all about money for them. Your salary needs to be competitive, and people do need to make a fair living in order to to pay their bills and to want to show up to work. But it's got to be more than just that. And people, I think, are really realizing that they just want more, out of their job that they're showing up to every day. And if you're not, doing more, other companies are, and you're just going to simply lose employees to those other companies. I- You know, we started focusing on culture like 7 years ago. I read the book Delivering Happiness, and then we
Mhm.
had their team come into the business. I'm friends with Jen Lim, the CEO, and you know, we were focused on culture when it wasn't a buzzword and when no one was talking about it. And now everyone's talking about it, and all these things have really been have been happening. And if you're not, back when my point was is back when we kind of started all this stuff, it, you know, people kind of looked at us, especially some of like companies that were maybe like more established or senior, or and they're like, what, this culture thing, what a joke. Very a lot of big organizations are very dismissive about it. And now, you fast forward to today, a lot of this is caught on. So there's like a lot of different options with all different types of cultures and things, and you got organizations at all different levels and sizes now that are really focused on this. And I feel like years ago, it was really these new innovative startups that were really doing this type of stuff. Now, the things are really starting to change. So if you're not really thinking about this or taking this serious, and it's hard for you to hire and lose people, you really gotta you have to look at it. You don't have an
Right.
option.
And that's why I get excited about it, Joe, because I love being able to help business owners and business leaders reach for that higher state of being and operating to be able to satisfy that. And that brings me to a question I'd love your perspective on. I just ran across an article that was just written this March of 2022, and it contrasted this or gave this idea of the workplace of the people, which is really pretty interesting, right? Rather than workplace for the people. Do you have a perspective on this matter? Have you heard about this? Does it ring something for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we try and make it fun here. We hear people out. We have a culture team, and we're constantly doing different things that um, just provide more value to our employees. That and some of the things are things where they can learn personally. Some are simply, when we do our huddles, we do icebreakers and things that get us out of our comfort zones, and it's like um, little mini little personal development exercises. But people just they want to be heard, they want more, and we provide that platform. But what's really important is culture is your business identity, and it's what happens when people aren't looking. And in culture just isn't about pizza parties and doing cool things. And I try. It's very hard to explain to someone what culture is. It's really something that's experience. It's very hard to explain. But you know, I tell people that it's not all rainbows and butterflies in my organization either. Like,
Mhm.
we are a highly accountable organization. Profit's not a dirty word in my organization. We talk about it. We need to be profitable in order to build and grow an amazing company. And, the better we do, the better it'll be for everybody. So that's something we actually talk about and address head on. So it's a balance of being accountable and having fun. You can't have too much fun, and you can't be too serious. And we really balance that out, and really try and go above and beyond and do additional things that really encompass the whole team and the whole organization.
Yeah, I was having a conversation this morning with another prospective guest who's going to come on. And we were talking about how, work is really a fantastic playground, a platform that you can really, in many ways across your life, best realize your potential. So if we, as employers, as business leaders, as business owners, can provide a playground, a platform for our employees to realize their highest and best potential by helping them to learn and grow and develop in the vein that they wish to grow, well, now we've done something. Now that's definitely a workplace of the people. So if we create that space, we listen to what they have to say, what their concerns are, what their desires for are. Now we've actually got that workplace of the people. And I'm working with an organization right now in Dallas. They're fantastic, Joe, how they listen, take the counsel, and we are creating something magical with them. It's just the coolest thing to see them go from, to your point, people are literally fleeing the doors for the doors, like people going out so fast they couldn't keep satisfying their customers, to now we have people that are engaged in conversation. There's a vibrancy in the organization now that wasn't there 6 months ago. And people are weighing in and they're proud to be there, and it's so exciting. So to your point, there's so much you can do with culture and organizational change, and it doesn't have to be that hard, but it does take listening to the people.
It takes listening, it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And I'll reference the pizza party again. It's not about throwing a pizza party and
Right.
hoping that's all going to work out. That's not reality. You have to commit. You got to get your leadership in the organization to commit, and you got to rally the troops. And again, it doesn't happen overnight. It took really some years to really nail our culture. But I think there's some immediate things that you can do to get it jump started. But you got to commit to it. And it's funny. I hear so many people say, and I'll be at a barbecue or party or whatever, and people complain how it's so difficult and no one wants to work. And you know, there are plenty of people that want to work and work
Yes,
hard.
agreed.
And this newer generation, how amazing is it that they want to be better? They want to be better and do more. And a lot of the things with culture really kind of goes back to personal development, because they want to learn and be a
Yes.
better person. And it's just, I think a lot of people that complain about it is they're just not providing that platform,
Right, I
and
agree.
I hear so many people talking about how listen, it is challenging in certain industries, depending on your industry, like, there are real challenges, but all of those are opportunities to do something different than your competitor. So you can get focused on how hard it is, or if you're dealing with it, if it's an industry-wide thing, then all of your competition is. So what is it that you can do better? And it has nothing to necessarily do with that job. Like, what is it that all of those in particular employees are not getting from their your competition. So it really is an opportunity. But we have 10 people starting next in 2 weeks. Like, it you're able to hire. It's out there. It's just you got to really I think look at what's going on in your org, and what are other people offering that you aren't, and what can you change?
Totally agree, Joe. Let's wrap our first break. I'm your host, Elise Cortez. We were here with Joe Camberado. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. We've been talking a bit about what's going on in today's world after the pandemic for business owners and leaders, and the opportunities that they have to create a business where people actually want to come and give their best. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us. Before we get back to the program, I'd like to invite you to check out my book, Purpose Ignited. I wrote it to awaken readers to their passion and their purpose and transform them into inspirational leaders who actually do create that workforce where people actually want to come to work and do their best. And I use this content as the basis for the Vitally Inspired program as well as the Grab with Gusto program. So I hope to check it out. If you're just joining the program today, my guest is Joe Camberado. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. So next, Joe, I would love to get your perspective, and I'll share as well, on what you're seeing in terms of the better performing companies doing to create these compelling workplaces we've been talking about. What do you see, or what do you recommend, or what are you doing to create a really compelling place where people actually want to come and show up?
Yeah, well, I could definitely talk to what we're doing. We're constantly doing, different things. One of the biggest things is we have a culture team and a culture leader. That team changes out yearly. Some people stay on, some people go. We try and mix it up, and leadership. Will stay on for sometimes 2 to 3 years, and then we'll identify a new leader. It's been really great. We've made progress. It's always a work in progress because things are always constantly changing. But what we try and do, because we don't want to overwhelm people with too many things, but we map out the whole year. And then each quarter, there's different initiatives that we're, doing within the company. Some of those are external, some of those are just fun things, some of those are internal things, some of those are departmentalized. Some of them are opportunities to learn, grow, and be better. So around personal development, some are around company goals and celebration. Some are just bring in, we'll bring in every morning at 9:05, we do morning stretches, and someone leads that up. It's something that we do like every single morning. There's a point person that heads it up. If they're out, they get a temporary morning stretch person or a morning stretcher.
A proxy. They need a proxy, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and it's our morning ritual, which is really cool. So we'll bring in someone that will do like we'll do like a little morning session of something like health related, whether it's like exercise, stretches, yoga, meditation, and they'll talk about like diet and stuff, usually around like the new year. we'll bring someone, around diet. And so just like those are examples, but it's just we're always switching up and doing different things. We do some community-based things, which are really cool.
Hmm.
We do Thanksgiving boxes around Thanksgiving. We wrap them here and then we hand deliver them to local families, which is great. So it's like a combination of like give back, community stuff. It's a combination of personal development. It's a combination of quarterly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly goals, and getting out and doing some fun things. And you have to like mix it up because things just get stale, and old. But the personal development one thing is probably some of the biggest things. Some of those are like self-ran by our team, whether it's just some sort of like an exercise to maybe discover something about you. We did this like wheel of life exercise to
Hmm.
kind of
Excellent.
identify like, like, hey, like what's going great in your life right now, where like the challenges and identifying maybe some areas that need some attention. It's a really simple exercise. We did in one of our company morning huddles. I can't tell you the feedback that I have got from that. It's and I do a lot of things outside of the office. I'm in YPO, and I've spent so much time and money on business and personal development, and the things that I learn outside of here, I bring into the company as well, and the team really appreciates that stuff.
Absolutely. So a couple things, listeners and viewers, I just want to call out a couple things that you said, Joe, that I think are really interesting, and I want to bake further into the education of this particular episode. So, all that team stuff that you're doing, right, Joe? That is, you're bringing people together, you're uniting people together, and energetically, that's really interesting from a limbic resonance perspective. So literally,
Connection.
right, literally, when I walk into an organization and I know that people are engaged and connected, you literally can feel that buzz. It's called
Yep.
limbic resonance. So I wanted
Oh
our
yeah.
listeners and viewers to understand, that you're intentionally creating and bringing people together energetically. That's amazing. So, and then secondly, building on what you said, of course, from my vantage point, it's my jam is, the whole meaning and purpose stuff. So what I find really compelling about helping develop cultures is to be able to, first we identify the company purpose. Why does this organization exist and why should anybody care? And then when the individuals can start to see how their individual purpose threads up through aligns and is amplified through that company purpose, well, now we're cooking with gas, right? So it's really, really interesting to be able to do that kind of work inside organizations and create a place where people feel bigger because of their involvement with their employer. It's so satisfying, so fulfilling, and so for me to get to do that kind of work and turn those light bulbs on.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
it
really
is
great. And
awesome.
if you walk through my office, you would absolutely feel that. I'd love to have you come by because it's a cool thing to witness. And I can't tell you like, when someone comes to my office, especially if it's the first time, they'll always say things like, "Wow, you can just feel the energy,
Yeah.
walking through here," and "Wow, everyone's so happy," and I think too sometimes I forget like, what's been created here, and now I'm kind of like, well, like, is your, are people not happy at your company,
Yeah.
or
Well,
in your office, or.
right, but there's an amazing difference. There's a huge spectrum. I know you know that, Joe, and it's so interesting in the work that I get to do by visiting various companies. I can see there's a huge spectrum of registration of energy and happiness and connection. So all worth working on. Like I love that it's clear to me, Joe, that you are working at, this is an intentional, purposeful behavior that you have here to develop and keep your culture growing. And that's another really important point, right? We don't just turn it on and create it and then walk away. It has to be stewarded.
Yeah, and I think there's a really good point to that. My business is helping business owners access capital so they can grow their business, right?
Hmm.
So I've had the privilege of working with small, medium-sized companies all across the country in all different industries at all different stages, from just getting started doing a few hundred thousand in sales to, doing 10, 20, 30 plus million in sales. And at every level, every business owner, they all deal with like the same core five challenges. It's like people, process,
Yeah.
marketing, people, you know,
Did I mention
ops,
people? Yeah.
and it's all the same things, right? It's just all different levels. And I think this is, you know, it took me a while to understand this, and whether it's in business or personally, oh, when I get to this point, everything's going to be okay. Like, and finally, when I get here, like it's all going to work out and it's all just going to be on like autopilot. And I think the reality is in life, but especially in business, is you're never done. Like
That's
you
right.
have to constantly change and innovate and improve, and you have to like if you stop working on your business, like what happens, right?
Yeah,
Like
there's no coasting. Yeah.
yeah, you fail, right? I mean, listen, you could build the company, put the right people in place, but those people are working and changing and innovating, right? And maybe you get to take a back seat, and that's your ultimate goal, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's amazing, and that's all possible. But the reality is, in your business, you have to constantly keep growing, improving, making the adjustments, and it's just a constant change. I I see a lot of owners get burnt out with that change
Hmm.
because they're expecting that when they got to a certain place that they don't have to do that work anymore. And the reality is you have to keep changing and keep working at it at your business, at marketing, at sales, at whatever it is that you're doing. But the same thing on culture. It doesn't. There's no end point. You know what I mean? So that it took me a real long time to really understand that. Once I actually understood that, like really understood it, it made things a lot less stressful.
Hmm.
Because then I was like, oh, okay, this isn't going to end it, and then I actually started to enjoy it. And one thing I'll share with all of your viewers too, like do the work because and pull someone in, like Dr. Cortez, because it's so good pulling in outside resources into your company. It's so needed. One thing it's always helped me in all different areas of my business to pull in outside consultants and advisors that are good. But it takes it off of you as an owner. But when you do the work around culture, like it's made it so much fun, and I'm like happy to show up at work at my own business, and I've got such a great team, and it's a delight to be surrounded by such great people. There
Hmm.
was a time in my business where I didn't want to show up, and I wasn't really fond of a lot of people that were here, and that
Hmm.
is what pushed me over the edge to really do the work on culture, and I committed to it and got my team around it. I lost some people on the team, but those people, it was good to lose them because they weren't the right people to be here, and what a difference. And it's really a pleasure to come to my office every day.
Thrilled to hear that, Joe. And that's another thing. Back to we've sort of been talking about this already, but it bears repeating in that there really is an opportunity to allow yourself or push yourself up, if you will, to be swept up in this change. There, I see what's happening right now is like a bit of it's like a revolution in many ways, in my opinion, Joe. What's been happening in the workforce is it's kind of like a forced union strike, and that
Yeah,
by employees,
yeah,
right? And that
pretty
they're going,
much.
I want this, I want work-life balance, I want quality of my life, I want to do work that's interesting to me, and I don't want to put up with people that are screamers for bosses, et cetera, whatever it might be. I'm going on to the next thing. And I think that is a great opportunity to elevate yourself as a business owner, as a business leader, to allow yourself to be swept up in that so that you're better, you're catalyzed by that transformation. I think that's encouraging and exciting.
100%. And from doing these things and committing to it, it does make you better as well too. And like I'm constantly learning,
Hmm. Yeah.
and then we just had someone. We had a few new hires last month or the month prior, and there was someone who was here for like 2 weeks and just said something amazing to me, and it was like it was really nice. And this person mentioned a few things that I like I learned something from, but it
Hmm.
was all she was really complimenting a lot of the things that we do here in the culture and everything, and how it's only been 2 weeks and how happy she was that she made a move, to our company. But there was like just some great things, and it was very motivating for us to keep doing, the work, and I still get a lot of out of it myself too.
Me too. I think I do too. And that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about here before we grab our next break. And that is that I've had a few conversations with people that I work with here in the Dallas market, Joe, and Some people, it's clear that this is an employee-driven workforce right now. That's the market. It's employee-driven. Sometimes we have sellers markets and buyers markets for real estate, and right now we're definitely in the employee-driven marketplace. And a few people have said that they really believe that once the market goes back to away from more so employee driven, that all this change and the need for an employee centric organization or a workforce of the people will go away and go back to more of what the employer wants. What do you think about that?
I think that ship sailed. I don't think it's going back. I think it's only going to accelerate. Business and businesses are growing. The population is growing. There's not enough business to serve the population as it stands today. There's going to be I don't think the amount of businesses that are going to be needed are going to be able to keep up. So I don't think that there was 4 million more businesses created last year coming out of the pandemic than usual.
Wow.
It's just this isn't changing. I think it's only going to accelerate. And what I do think is going to happen is certain companies are going to get better, stronger, and they're going to nail it, and they're going to offer way more. And certain companies are going to be non-existent, and they're going to go away.
Yeah.
And I don't think
survival of the fittest.
Yeah. And I think the world and business it just is continuing to be better and better. It's really very interesting. There's 8 billion people. In 1950, there was, I think, 2 billion people, which was the most amount of people in the history of mankind. And there's 8. Fast forward to where we are today, there's 8 billion worldwide. I think things are just going to continue to keep accelerating. I think we're just getting started. So.
Well, that's good. We'll be fit for the whole exercise then, Joe. I'm in with you. Let's grab our last break. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. We're on there with Joe Camerato. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. We're talking a bit about what's going on in the world of work and culture. After the break, we'll continue the conversation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dr. Elise Cortez is a management consultant specializing in meaning and purpose, an inspirational speaker and author. She helps companies visioneer for greater purpose among stakeholders and develop purpose-inspired leadership and meaning-infused cultures that elevate fulfillment, performance, and commitment within the workforce. To learn more or to invite Elise to speak to your organization, please visit her at elisecortez.com. Let's talk about how to get your employees working on purpose. This is Working on Purpose with Dr. Elise Cortez. To reach our program today or to open a conversation with Elise, send an email to Elise, A-L-I-S-E, at elisecortez.com. Now, back to Working on Purpose.
Thanks for staying with us and welcome back to Working on Purpose. One other bit of news I want to share with you before we get back with Joe is last August of 2021, I released an anthology of 25 stories of women from around the world. I went and found these women and they share their intimate story of how they've discovered their purpose and are now serving from it. It's called Passionately Striving and Why. And I'm actually more proud of that book than I am my own first book. So I hope you'll check it out. It's pretty exciting. By the way, I'm also now scouting for men to share their story. So if you are a man who is living your purpose or you know someone who is, I'd love to talk to him. Send him my way. If you're just joining the program, my guest is Joe Camerato. Okay, that guy, Joe Camerato. He's the CEO of National Business Capital. I'm your host, Dr. Elise Cortez. All right, Joe. So you're in for the anthology, eh?
I am, and you can follow me at Grow by Joe, and that's me living my purpose is helping others grow.
That's so cool. We will definitely talk about this, my dear. You can run, but you can't hide. And I do make it to New York, so look out.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh boy. Exactly. Look what you created now. Okay. So we were talking before the break about just, things are not going to, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle, right? The way the world is evolving, the way the workforce is evolving and what people want from work is not going to go back. So I'm really interested in your position on what to do with this matter of remote work or hybrid work.
You know, it's so interesting. It's so funny because so many companies, big companies too. I was just reading about this yesterday. It, you know, we're like, we're never, we're going to be remote. And now a lot of them are talking about like, no, it's time to come back in the office.
Hmm.
Um, I don't, I don't think there's anything wrong with, remote work. I think some companies are, better fit for it. And then there's some companies that like remote work is not like if you own a restaurant, there's no remote work, right? So,
Right.
and if you're contractor, construction, transportation, like
Right.
there's just certain businesses that it's just not
Right.
possible.
Right.
Um, I'm not a fan of remote work. What's amazing is, and like going back to like nailing culture, because we had such an amazing culture when when the pandemic first happened. Obviously, we all were home and quarantined, and no one knew what the heck was going on. It was very, you look back, where we are now is like way different than March of 2020. So we were all home, and then finally, when things started to open back up, months later, and we crept back into the office, there was a point where I gave everyone the option to work from home, and no one took advantage of it. Everyone came in. There was like, one or two people that had some serious health things. It was completely understandable. It was fine. They work remote. It was all good. Everyone else had the option. No one wanted to, which is really amazing. Um, so I think you got to do whatever works for your company. Um, and some companies have changed and realized like, hey, we can do this remote. We got people across the country. It works well. That's great. But I think that culture is built when you're together and connected. And I'm a big fan of being in person. So I just that's just my take on it.
Sure.
I think a lot of people, a lot of companies are starting to change their tune. And I don't know, it's hard if you're all remote. You really got to go out of your way to build culture,
Yep.
to build camaraderie. You've got to utilize like chats, Zoom. I think
Hmm.
that you got to have at least a quarterly, like in-person meet somewhere, like a home base. Um, but I think a lot of things get missed. I think a lot of people don't really get. It takes them so much longer to get or know your organization if they started remotely. I think you got to like counter it in some sort of a hybrid fashion to
Hmm.
really build that like that connectedness and team. There are some companies that do this really really well. I think the company WordPress is 100% remote. So there's some companies that have been nailing this pre-pandemic, but I think it's whatever your belief is. I'm pro in person, um,
Hmm.
and I'm all about that.
Okay. I'm glad to get your perspective on that because I know there's a wide array of perspectives, and I work with a lot of professional services kind of organizations as well, and some of those are a little bit more conducive to remote work. But quick fun story for you, Joe. In January, I think late January, one of my clients said, "Elise, I got a present for you. It's your birthday present," and she slides it across the table, and it's this book right here, Managing Virtual Teams. And she
Yeah.
goes, you read it and tell me what it says. You like to read, I don't like to read. And she was also on that whole thing of she really didn't like the idea of she's a totally in person sort of gal when it comes to running her business, but she was looking at how do I actually make and satisfy the people that might want to work more hybrid. So anyway, listeners and viewers, she is coming. The author is Catherine Matisky. She's coming on next week, so we'll talk more in specific detail about how to do this. But to your point, Joe, I've already read her book, so I know what she does say is it does take off so much more competency as a leader or as a manager to run a virtual team well. You need a different set of competencies, and you've got to be much more proactive in your communication to keep
Yep.
everything together. And then what she also talks about, which we'll talk more about, is if you're going to do that, you've got to create a team charter that is of an agreement of accountability and how things are done, et cetera. And everybody buys into that. So I really appreciate, I definitely, I like eyeballs. I can't even tell you, I wouldn't have actually two books out if it wasn't for the pandemic. I can tell you that because I didn't get the eyeballs that I liked. Right. So
Yeah.
I totally appreciate that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think if you are going to be fully remote, you got to make a serious effort to to build those relationships and accountability,
Yeah.
and some companies that's easier to do, like, everything that they're doing, like professional services, marketing companies, it's like task oriented, like
Right.
here's this project and it's got a deadline and it's
Yeah.
delivered or it isn't, right? So, and if you're not like that, then you're kind of like, you don't really know, I think, what people are doing. So
Hmm.
you got to be focused on it. I think just because people want to be remote and hybrid doesn't mean that if you offer that's automatically going to make those positions work. So,
Right. Or
I
that
think
they're going to be effective in that role.
correct,
Either they don't
correct.
know, it took me a while. I started working from home, from my home office in 2003, a long time ago. And it took me a while to get efficient and effective working from home, partly because I'm an extrovert, right?
Yeah, yeah. Same here. Like I'm not, I love being around people and I love the communication. I love the things that just pop up in my office,
Hmm.
walking by the hall, overhearing something.
Right.
I like communicating with people on the floor. I like them to overhear me, on purpose so they can hear what's going on. And it's like
Yeah.
how things are, learned. So yeah,
Hmm.
definitely.
Hmm. Well, since you're interested in culture and it certainly is on your purview, I'm interested if you have anything on your radar of the kinds of like outdated people policies that you just think this is just so passe, please give this up. Do you have anything, is there a list or a few things that you recommend that people look at or examine whether or not this still works for them?
I think a lot of it I found in running a really, you know, in running a great company. Um, I think a lot of decisions, I think you just got to make like logical decisions and go with your gut and your heart, over than like just being like overly, strict and just
Yeah.
unrealistic.
Yeah.
And there's just so many situational things, and I see so many people, and then especially managers that are so black and white with
Yeah.
policies,
Right.
and like life happens. Just And I'm very respectful of that and understanding. And when life happens, like we go out of our way to work, with whoever it is in the organization. And like I think that's really like the biggest thing is this old school like way dictatorship of like my way or the highway. And I
Right.
think um, I think people are also driven by different things. So just understanding what people are driven by, because what might work really well for one person might not work, for another. And I think, when I was early on in, this December will be 15 years that I incorporated and started my company, um, which is pretty crazy. I was very like, so like, everything had to be a certain way. And if you didn't like comply with that, it was a problem. And I think most things that come up um, you know, with, uh, with people, like, it's not a big deal. Like a lot of these things aren't going to take down or change your organization, so,
Hmm. Hmm.
um,
Yeah, a few that I just want to throw out for our listeners and viewers for you to really consider. Do you really need to hang on to these things? And a lot of these things this is the way we've always done it. And one of them for me is people have to be in their job for whatever it is, 6 months or 1 year before they can apply or be considered for another one. Please throw that thing out. You don't need
oh
that.
yeah,
Right. Don't
100%.
don't
Yeah.
do that. I personally think that forced ranking evaluation is awful. It's the most gut wrenching, demotivating thing you can do to people in an organization. That's another one that I would really have you look at, please, listeners and viewers.
Yep.
Um, let's see. Yeah, even too, to the point of, if you've got an organization that can support more of a remote workforce, could you look at hybrid? Does everybody really have to be in the office 5 days a week, kind of thing? So some of those things that, to Joe's point, don't be so black and white about it. Listen and learn and kind of consider. Those are just a few things for you to chew on, listeners and viewers.
Yeah, another thing that came up as you were talking too is, like I don't believe in yearly reviews. I think they're a joke and
Mhm.
ridiculous.
Yep.
I think they're completely pointless and ineffective. That's my view on them. I've had arguments over this, whether it was with my team, or other business owners. We do these quick quarterly reviews,
Yep.
we run our business on the EOS process from the book Traction. And we do what's called a people analyzer, and we check in. It's a real quick thing. It's a quick check-in quarterly. I think if you're waiting a year to check in, with people on your team, like that person might not be there, or so many opportunities were missed.
Right.
And I think that my point is that, and we break out like our teams into pods, and then management, and some of those are junior management that report up to senior management, and those managers, are responsible for checking in with their team. My point is, I think you need to be a little bit more in tune and communicating throughout the years. Things just change so fast today in business that you can't be waiting for a year to check in with your team members.
Yeah. I had a great conversation on air a couple of years ago with Marcus Buckingham, who spent a couple of decades at the Gallup organization, and he's co-written a book called 9 Lies About Work. The nuts of it are that he's really putting forth the idea that most organizations are created, of course, and operated for their own efficiency, which means that we lose the heartbeat of the human being who's running that at the expense of that operational centralized engine that spits people in and chews them around and does their thing. So I love your point. What you're really saying there, Joe, is the need to be agile as business owners and business leaders. Be agile, go with it, dance, see where do I need to change? Do I need to go right for a couple minutes? Do I go left? What am I doing here? And be listening and being flexible. I think that's so important in today's times.
100%. I think a lot of people want to do yearly reviews so they can only have to deal with it once a year.
Right.
And it's like, but if you have the right teams in place, you can, your teams can do those quick check-ins. And then if there are things that really need to be addressed, then you can address them and take more time, So yeah, I think you got to be super agile, and you got to keep moving and changing, and you need to be getting that, information in real time.
Yeah, agreed.
You can afford to wait.
Keep learning. So we've done it, Joe. We've gotten to the end of the show already. It goes by so fast. This show is listened to and watched by people across the world who care about creating a workplace where people actually want to come to work and give their best. We create inspirational leaders that lead them to their greatness, and we do business that betters the world. What would you like to leave them with today?
Awesome. Well, I would say keep growing, and get started on culture. It's an awesome, beautiful thing. Remember, it's not all about rainbows and butterflies. It's also about being accountable. And there's no better time than now to get started. So, thank you for having me. I hope you had some great takeaways and listening in. Please feel free to check me out and visit my company, nationalbusinesscapital.com. And you can check me out on YouTube, youtube.com/grow-by-Joe.
Awesome, Joe. You're so welcome. Thanks for being on. And I will be talking to you later about the anthology and visiting you in New York when I get over there. So look out.
Awesome. I look forward to it.
You heard, listeners and viewers, you heard Joe talk about how to find him. So he's covered that for us. You can also look at him on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram at Grow by Joe. Last week, if you missed the live show, you can always catch it via recorded podcast. We were on there with Kelly McDonald talking about her book, It's Time to Talk About Race at Work, which will help us all better understand how to meaningfully engage in the diversity, inclusion, and belonging world. Next week, we'll be on air with Catherine Matiski, author of Leading Virtual Teams, Managing from a Distance During the Coronavirus. See you there. Remember that work's at least a third of our lives, so let's work on purpose.
We hope you've enjoyed this week's program. Be sure to tune into Working on Purpose, featuring your host, Dr. Elise Cortez, each week on W4CY. Together, we'll create a world where business operates conscientiously, leadership inspires impassioned performance, and employees are fulfilled in work that provides the meaning and purpose they crave. See you there. Let's work on purpose.